So, Peter, thank you so much for such a thoughtful and detailed description of your experience. I know this is something that you've processed over many, many years. Tell us how it's impacted how you live your life today.
Big question. I can talk about the immediacy of it, how I live my life now, as opposed to how I processed through it. I have as much fun as I can. That's sort of a bottom line for me. I try to find as much enjoyment in my life as I am able to pack in. If I can't get out and enjoy my life doing the things that bring me thrill, um, I, I don't know what else I would do. But in terms of my relationship with other people, I know that I hurt other people. I I know that I do. And so I try to, as much as I can, minimalize that. I don't let myself be a doormat. I came back with a lot of courage and strength. It's not the same thing to try to minimalize pain. It's actually coming from a position of strength. So I try not to hurt people as much as I can, but I still do because that's
It's the nature of humans, right?
definitely right.
Some people have trepidations of dying. It's a scary thing, or, oh my God, the list of transgressions that I have committed in my lifetime, I'm going to experience hell forever. You talk about that not only did you experience all the enormity of bliss of the love that you had given in your life, but you also experienced the pain of all the transgressions that you had caused. What would you say, based on your own personal experience of both the love that you felt and the pain that you felt during that experience?
The pain felt when I went through it immense, but it turned out to be only a centimeter deep. And the love was astronomically large. The comparison is negligible. And I anticipate, although I don't know, I anticipate going back through a similar process and I'm all for it. I've been waiting to go every minute of my life ever since. Not every near death experiencer goes through a suffering phase. Why that is, I'm not sure. So you don't have to have that expectation. But if I have to go back through one again, I'm all for it.
Very few people would say that. I'm praying for my dad. Most people are fearful of it. And you're here to say, don't be afraid.
Don't be
Don't be afraid.
afraid. It is a transition. Consciousness inhabits the body. E- Not the brain doesn't create consciousness. And when a person has a near death experience, you know that the consciousness doesn't originate with yourself, then it's especially easier to recognize that you're not your body. I inhabit my body. And so it's expendable for me. So this is the reason, and this is the reason why I have as much fun as I can. I've gotten hurt. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten hurt, broken bones, tore this apart, that thing, and then they get put back together again. Because I'm trying to use this thing to its ultimate edge. How far can I push this thing intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, physically? Because I know that it's expendable. I can't give you what I have from this experience. And I can't expect you to believe me. All I can say is that if you lean into the light inside you, you'll discover that it exists now, which will make your transition easier when you go. And I've seen this a whole bunch of times. I used to be a church pastor for a long time. I sat alongside a lot of dying people, and certain people stand out to me because they developed over a lifetime a spirituality that allowed them to see the transition as something that is good for them. And usually among the elderly, not usually among the youth, but sometimes among the youth. Those who never developed a higher sense of themselves lived much more fearfully. Now, most of these people function in the world of belief. I don't function in the world of belief. I function in the world of experience. But many people have experiences that they wave their hand at, go away. I don't know what that was. But you might have had an experience where you were momentarily transformed or shocked into seeing that the world wasn't as you thought it was and left a warm fuzzy inside your heart. That matters. And if you can attach to the warm fuzzy that it left behind, you'll find a doorway there. And that doorway, if you keep returning to that doorway, you'll discover that it's much larger than yourself, and it will help you in your transition. I wish I could transition into the next life as you die. Dying can be hard. There's no doubt about it. And grief and mourning, they're real. But death, oh, baby, death is fabulous. It is so much better than here. I don't know a single near death experience person who's not waiting to go back.
Oh, that's amazing. And it gives hope that we are indeed spiritual beings having a human experience. We're here for it all. I'm excited about living my life, the ups and the downs. I have to remind myself and catch myself at times when I'm like, it was such a hard day or such a hard week. And I wish it wasn't like this. That actually, I'm here to experience it all, not just the highs, but the highs and the lows so that you can appreciate in the contrast what an amazing, extraordinary experience it is to be able to be human and to live this life.
I've spent a long time studying mystics globally in ancient texts, and they all agree on certain things. And one of the things they agree on is that you can't outrun the bad in your life, and that the bad in the life is part of the experience. And it is not only just part of the experience in our lives, the, the duality of beauty and ugliness, or goodness and bad, or any of these dualities, they all arise from one thing. Everything arises from the oneness of being. And because it all arises from the oneness of being, all of it is equal in itself. And so, good or bad, I'd like to say that I don't suffer. That's it. Okay. I have bad weeks. I had a bad week a few weeks ago. I had a good day yesterday, but it all is process of acceptance of the oneness inside myself. So instead of trying to manipulate my exterior, the good and the bad, and I try to achieve and get things done and make things happen, but I aim instead to find the balance point inside myself so that the good is great and the bad is also great. Not because I enjoy it, but because I get to go back inside the center of myself where I see that one is not greater than the other. They're just experiences that I'm having. And I have the commensurate emotional response to those things. That doesn't eliminate my mental response to them. What it does give me is a peace inside myself where I get to go back into this place of quietude, where I get to take a few breaths, calm myself down, and remember who I am. And who I am is a passerby. Whether I get a thorn in my foot or a gold star in my forehead, yes, of course, I want the gold star and I don't want the thorn in my heel. But both of them are just part of living. And the pain that I go through makes me more empathetic. It makes me more compassionate, allows me to see that another person's pain is similar to mine. And then I can see them as a more whole person.
Based on your experience of dying and the love that you felt and the way you describe it as bliss and awe and overwhelming comfort, what do you think the higher being, the oneness, the source of all that is God, whatever anyone wants to call it, what do you think it wants us to know?
Love. One word, love. Well, the hell that I went through wasn't so much that I was a bad person who did bad things, as it was that I was a limited form of the unlimited. And I wasn't judged. I judged myself. I made my own comparison. The unlimited, all it was doing to me was spilling love, showing me that I'd always been beloved. I always will be beloved, and nothing can separate from me from this because it is so much bigger than me. I am a little tiny drop in the ocean of love, but I'm also made of love. The power of that is I may feel darkness and depression in this world, but in the center of myself, I know where I am from, to whom I belong, and where I'm going. And it's love.
It's hard to ask any more questions. I am overwhelmed and I've got goosebumps from head to toe. I needed to hear that today.
Makes me cry. So,
Me too.
so beautiful.
It
I,
really is.
and it's not me. It's not me, Michelle. It is so much bigger than just humanity. It's affable, unspeakable, unlimited.
Why do we go through this human experience if we are at the core of our being, at our most truest self, spiritual beings? Why do you think we are brought into this experience of human life?
I have a question for you as a result
Oh,
of
please
your
do.
question for me. It's very Jewish because a lot of rabbinic teaching, when a student asks a question, they ask a question in return. And so this is a rabbinic question, and it is, what's the one thing that the unlimited, with a capital U, what's the one thing the unlimited can't have? It's limitation. And so all there is in our universe is limitation. It has parameters of physics and quantum physics and biology and chemistry. And it functions as an expression of the divine seeking to understand itself in limited form. And so when I went through my hell experience, it wasn't like, St. Peter was sitting up there with a book and opens it. Oh, this is Peter, and then reads through it. It's not like that at all. It was that God, Allah, Brahma was me, saw me, experienced everything I experienced with me. No separation between me and my experience and the experience of the divine experiencing it with me. And it seems to me that the human being is so trapped inside its brain and skull and egoic mind that it can't conceive that it's just a vessel. And when a unitive experience or a Kundalini awakening or a near-death experience occurs to a certain extent, the realization that this is an inhabited form, like like a biological robot with an app inside of it. But really the app is just this little tiny thing. It functions only because it's connected to the cloud. You don't have internet connection, you can't run your app. And that's the way that I conceptualize my experience here. And so why do humans exist is a very self-centered point of view. It's very human. And I think it comes from the Genesis and the mythology around humanity being the particularly best pet of God. We're like the special one, but we're not. We're not just because I'm saying so, but because if you caught what was going on in the Pentagon just yesterday.
Yeah, I was actually going to raise that. That's really, I was like, okay, we found non human biologics. Okay.
Yeah, non-human biologics. And well, that understanding, when it becomes clear that we are not alone in the universe and we are not the most advanced species in the universe, that humanity is not the apple of God's eye. And when that happens, the whole house of cards of theology comes tumbling down. And when that happens, who are we going forward? In the West, Buddhism has a slightly different point of view, of course. Hinduism the same. But in the West, our whole culture and society is built on Genesis and the biblical tradition. Doesn't matter if you're Muslim or Jewish or Christian, it's all in that same category. And I'm super looking forward for that, or forward to that. I want that house of cards to fall, because when it then separates us from the question, why me? Why am I suffering? Because it's not just humanity. It's the barred owl scooping up the frog in my pond. And the frog's like, but the baby owls are like, breakfast. And the mom is like, I love you kids. Everything eats something else in this world, in this whole universe. Everything consumes something else. And so first, it's not just us who suffer. And second, it's totally temporary. and you get to pass through here. It's the best news of all is that you don't have to stay here. You get to move on.
I'm curious, when you are looking for the experience of being back at that highest level of your truest self, the place where you feel closest to God or that experience again, what is the practice that you turn to?
One is called centering prayer, which is out of the Catholic tradition of mysticism, monastic. I happen to grow up near the monastery where it was developed, but it also has a deep root in Theravada Buddhism because of Jack Kornfield and the Buddhist Center in Massachusetts. And so I had a centering practice of using a word or a chant and writing it on my breath. And when my mind wanders, I come back to my word and my breath. It's a very simple practice. I aim myself at my word and my breath, and I ride my breath up and down. And I still practice that in conjunction with Kriya Yoga. And Kriya Yoga comes from the Yoga Sutra tradition. It was first organized in 400 BCE by a man named Patanjali, and it's still in print. And the autobiography of a yogi also talks about Kriya Yoga in the 25th chapter. And within the year after I died, I discovered these things. And I trusted that Yogananda was telling the truth, that if I practiced these techniques, I could carve myself wide open. I could make myself a vessel. And so I practiced these techniques for my lifetime. And what I discovered was that using breath and mental focus and accessing my, my prana, my chi, my life force energy, my Holy Spirit, whatever name you choose that this goes, your energy body, whatever you want to call this thing, this energy came back with me. This energy is me, and it gives my physical body access to me. The most consistent thing about all of my yoga is this breath and energy work. And so in my physical yoga practice, instead of having music playing or listening to the teacher tell me now, flowing and do this and do that and the other thing, I instead, when I'm in my form, if I'm in downward dog, for instance, I'll stay in downward dog for an extended period. I'll structure my skeletal structure so that my bones support most of my weight. And then I'll run through an inventory in my body. You have to be able to see your muscles. You have to be able to see inside your body to then run your chakras. And I run from my palms up to my crown, along down my spine, down to my legs, to the bottom of my feet. And I run through my hips and I run through my spine, and I just run back and forth with my mind. And what it does is it replaces the music and the yoga teacher and the chant that I use in my centering prayer with my physical body. And so now I'm practicing not thinking. And that's the same thing I'm practicing my centering prayer. In both techniques, I am stepping out of the way. And the more my egoic mind steps out of the way, breath by breath, the larger my vessel becomes within me. That's one way to think about it. It peels off layers after layer after layer of the 70,000 veils of Islam. Or another metaphor is that it drops grains of gold dust in me, grain at a time, a grain at a time, a grain at a time, until I begin to fill with this silence. And it's in this silence where, as Meister Eckhart talked about, wherein I see God, God sees me. It's in that place where I have no conception of either myself or the divine, where the divine becomes manifest. And these techniques have been used globally in every single religious culture. Breath and mental focus. If you're a Sufi, you whirl. If you're an Orthodox rabbi at the West Wall, you rock. And if you're a Qigong master, you practice Qigong. It all has to do with mental focus and breath. So I have found that with regular practice, while being a dad and raising a family and having a job, that I have carved cavern inside myself. And this cavern gives me this capacity to return to the center of the temple of my heart in bad times. I have a space that I can return to, wherein I can find the strength that I need to persevere with fortitude. It's the most powerful thing there is. When you know that you're a passerby and none of it really matters, there's a lot of freedom that comes along with it.
Absolutely. So, where would you advise a beginner to start? Obviously, I think centering prayer or some form of meditation.
For sure.
Is there a practice, since you've done this for so many years now, from a starting standpoint that you would recommend?
Sitting meditation. Give yourself a time limitation. Set a place in your house where you're going to try this out for 7 days. Make a decision, a commitment to 7 days at 8 a.m. every morning in this corner. I'm going to meditate. And you show up for 7 days in a row for 20 minutes and you take a word, and it doesn't have to be a sacred word. It can be a number, the number 7 or the number 1 or the color purple. It doesn't matter. Because eventually what happens is the word falls away anyway. And when your mind wanders, and it will, just repeat your word, your prayer, your chant, your color, your number over and over. And when your mind wanders, all you need to do is continue to go back to your word and your breath again and again. And what may happen in the first 7 days, if you make this a dedicated process, you may have a moment or moments of quietude or silence where suddenly the word and the breath are no longer effortful. They become effortless and the mind doesn't wander. The mind is at peace. The spiritual results of the practice of meditation is the elimination of the attachment to the egoic self. And when one becomes detached from the egoic self, then one begins to sit in this quietude, in this peace, in this non-anxiety place, this stressless place where the mind isn't running and the is a polishing of the lens that I mentioned, the eye wherein I see God, God sees me. It's a polishing of that lens. So very simple. Breath, prayer chant, mantra, 20 minutes a day. And when your mind wanders, always come back to the breath, always come back to your prayer word or your mantra. And if you practice this over and over again, it runs in the subconscious continually. And then when you need it, when you're in a high stress situation or an anxiety situation, you can just find it immediately.
I love it. Peter, this has been nothing short of extraordinary, as it always is. Every conversation we have, I think just even being able to give our listeners the peace that you can let go of the anxiety. There are tools out there to do that. And the experience of death doesn't have to be scary. In fact, it is incredibly beautiful. And at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is love.
And you don't need a meditative life to love. Yeah. And if you don't have a special person in your life, if you have a bird or a kitty cat, that's love too. If you love being in nature, that's love too. Love is Human beings have a single word for this thing that has 10,000 meanings, but everybody knows it when they feel it and nobody can say what it is. And that is a definition of the divine.
And we have that within us. And I think that's so important. The ability to see the divine within ourselves is sometimes incredibly hard for humans. And I think the more we recognize that we do have goodness in us, we have divinity in us, that that love can actually come from ourselves too,
And for ourselves
and
too.
for ourselves. And that enables us to bring it out more to the world. And that that is not a selfish practice, that's a nothing
Mhm.
practice.
It's the most unselfish practice. The most unselfish practice is the elimination of the attachment to the self. And then when one begins that process, which is what we're talking about in meditation, the detachment from our egoic mind, that's wherein we find compassion and kindness and humility. And so what seems to be a selfish, self-absorbed, I'm going to drive myself inward actually is the opposite because it brings compassion and kindness and humility into the world, into your daily life, not only for the people around you, but for yourself. And so this cultivates a self-forgiveness. Oh, I did something wrong to this person on purpose or accidentally. I can find a way inside the same space to forgive myself and not have to run the tape loop of recrimination, the rumination of I am a bad person. I've done a bad thing. I can interrupt that thought process and I can return to this peaceful place. I can apologize to the person that I hurt, and then I can not have to carry that with me because I've apologized and I recognize myself as flawed.
I just keep thinking the ability to feel love and compassion for oneself at a deep level, at the level of the understanding that the part of us that is eternal is from source energy. It's from God. It is the divine spirit, whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
That part of ourselves, everybody has in them, and our ability to see that in ourselves then has a ripple effect. We see it in others. And when we recognize that in others, we give them the permission to see it in themselves. And that's how that ripple of impact that we can have from a singular but profound experience of love.
Absolutely. It ripples out. And like you said, when I see it inside myself, I see it inside others. And it's not just seeing, it's feeling. It's this energy that is all things, is transferred or communicates between us. I mean, I know you're feeling it now because I can feel it from you. I feel it from you because you are me. The light sees itself, the light hears itself, it speaks for itself. It is all things that are. It's what the Hindus call the Maya illusion that prevents us from experiencing it. And so, how to help someone who has not had an experience have an experience and so that they can discover this light inside themselves. So, most people have already had that. And maybe they had it the day their baby was born and they held that little life right next to their heart and they felt this love that transcends their own body. That's an access point. If you can find inside your life, sometime in your life, whether it was sitting at a sunset and that overwhelmed you and made you cry, or you saw this most beautiful act of kindness, in that moment is an avenue to begin to move from belief to experience because you've had an experience. It's just often not remembered or recognized.
So profound. And I'm tearing up because I feel it so deeply. And I think once you have that awakening, being in that remembering is where you prefer to be because you see that it is everywhere. In some of the most unexpected places, you can experience this remembering of who we really are and seeing it in somebody else and having them reflect that light back to you. It's just such a divine awakening.
It's awakening and reawakening and reawakening and reawakening until you're awake. And I'll tell you that when I expect to be awake is the day I die. And so I'm not worried about anybody. I have no worry about anybody at all because I know that in the moment that they die, they're going to discover the light. And I think we have a choice to choose the light, but it's so overwhelming. It's like a cascade of Niagara Falls. You can't resist. I couldn't resist. There was no way I could resist. I couldn't cling to my own pain. And when I was clinging to my pain that I'd given away in my life, I suffered my pain. But as soon as I recognized the light, all of that, it didn't like wash away. It dematerialized as if it had never existed.
Right. Well, so for everybody out there, and I know there are a lot of people out there with anxiety issues of a variety of kinds. And I know the feeling is incredibly real. I want you to think about this because I think when you recognize again that we are all connected, that this light within us is the same within all of us, that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and you try to really tap into that place that is the truest part of you. All of these things that occupy our minds and bring on such great anxiety, find a new place in our experience of this human life where maybe it doesn't overwhelm you all the time, all the time of your life. I know it doesn't mean it goes away. We all have those moments of suffering and grief. But if you can find that part of you, either through some sort of centering meditation, prayer, coming back to yourself, when you find that highest part of you and you spend time dwelling in there, the anxiety really does dissipate. It is an alleviation of anxiety. So I highly recommend if you don't have some sort of practice around that, follow Peter, look for practice, go online, download an insight time. It's simple 20 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day to experience this higher sense of self, truest sense of self, the divinity within, and it's so worth it. So, with that, Peter, I'm going to ask you a final question. What does it mean to you to live your extraordinary life?
To reintegrate myself with the world in a way that brings a positive impact to the community where I live and with whom I'm involved, and to have as much fun as I possibly can in the meantime, and to love as much as I'm able with all of its wounds that come along with it. I think the most extraordinary thing for me is helping people find the light inside themselves so that they don't need me anymore, so that they don't need anyone anymore. They don't need a teacher. The teacher is inside themselves. And if I can help people find that inside themselves, then you have all you need. And my extraordinary life will end with a smile on my face. As it did in 2015, I died again then. And it was a pretty happy day for me.
But we brought you back anyway. Our work is not done.
Yep.
And here we are. Peter, where can people connect with you? We'll include the specific links in the show notes, but for anyone listening in this moment, where can they find you?
You can find me at peterpanagore.love. And from there, you can find my YouTube channel, Peter Panagore, where I do some Zoom groups, teach meditation, deconstruct mysticism and the biblical and global religious traditions. I help people who've had mystical experiences of any kind, but primarily near-death experiences, to help them navigate their life in this world. Once you see Paris, it's hard to go back to the farm. And but you have to go back to the farm. So how do you do this?
If you could, give us an update on Heaven is Beautiful, the book becoming a movie.
Oh, it's good news. It's good news. I have a renewed contract, and that includes an option on my third book, which I'm writing for the movie now. So the movie is Heaven is Beautiful. That's Act 2. And I've been working on Act 1 and Act 3, which is going to be my next book. And that's been optioned. And there's a potential, instead of a movie, for a Netflix or Prime, Amazon kind of video series up to 3 seasons. So that's going very well.
We will look forward to seeing this come to life in some format, streaming or on film or TV. We wish you the best of luck, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon. So thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate you, and I appreciate you sharing and helping to bring so much love to this conversation around dying.
And I appreciate you too, Michelle. And I want to thank you for the time that we had together some years ago. And that I don't know if I've ever said this to you before, but I am wicked proud of you as a person. You have done extraordinary things in your life, and I'm glad to know you.
Thank you so much. That means so, so much. Thank you. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please comment, like, and subscribe to this channel to continue to receive content that inspires. Let us know what resonates and what you'd like to hear more about. You are here for a purpose. It's time for you to step into that purpose, become the most authentic version of you, and start living, truly living your extraordinary life. It's never too late. And in fact, we're just getting started.